Going live. Okay, it's very late, so this is going to be a short live. And so thank you for being here with me. Please join me if it feels good to you to take a deep breath in and letting it out. It's Wednesday night and it's day 17. Day 17 of 30 lives in 30 days. Those of you that have been watching, you might already know, and anybody that might be seeing this for the first time. Hey, Lauren. Those who might be seeing this for the first time on the replay, I had a download in a healing session to go live for 30 days on social media, and today is day 17. I'm so proud of myself, and just really proud of myself to be keeping my word, showing up every day. Tonight is the night Tonight's the night that it's Wednesday night, so I had my class tonight at Casa Mana Bliss, and it was a really great class. And I wanted to talk a little bit about a similar subject that I spoke about in there. Wait, the dog is crying. You okay, sweetie? Okay, we're all good. She waited until I went live to start crying. Okay, so anyway, what wants to come through? Yeah. So what was very interesting is that there were several people in the class tonight that were dealing with certain situations in relationships with relatives and in all different aspects. And I also have several other people in my life in different ways right now dealing with this. And so it has inspired me today to talk about surrender and trust in the realms of forgiveness and compassion in relationships, and especially in relationship to yourself. So the meditation tonight was on forgiveness, but also compassion and love, but it all leads to forgiveness and, of course, self-forgiveness. And so that meditation was really beautiful. When I got home tonight from class, just a PS, just to get off the subject for a second, I got home from class tonight, and there was a giant roach on the counter. I freaked out, and it's still crawling around because I can't kill them. So if anybody has any tips on what to do, now I don't know where it is, so I was thinking I should get like some kind of plastic bowl to throw on top of it or something, but I'm going to have to take care of that at some point. Anyway, I keep looking around like it's going to creep up on me. Yeah. If you don't know me well, like I have not been good with bugs my entire life, and so I apparently must have had something happen in a past life that makes me really freak out with bugs. But anyways, so I digress. But I think that the thing to share tonight, no, I'm not even going to go there. The part that is coming up this evening is a part about forgiveness that I didn't even get to talk about in class. And yes, in addition to forgiveness, there is compassion, and forgiveness for yourself for whatever you said or what you didn't say, what you wish you said. But there's another part of the forgiveness process that I'm not sure is spoken about that much, is grief. And so when we go through the forgiveness process, it also has us, you must go into acceptance before you can forgive, right? You get to accept like what happened and accept things as they are. And so I know a lot of suffering happens when we wish that things were different, or we think somebody should have done something a different way. And then a lot of times that's when we hold that energy in our bodies. And if we hold it in our bodies for a long enough time, we can actually get very sick. So the key is to catch it earlier in our lives. Earlier in the, not in our lives, but earlier to the incident, as close to the incident as possible, so that we can not hold on to it and let it go. And so part of that acceptance, like we can't just say, I accept and I forgive without feeling it in our bodies. And of course, yes, you can say that, but to actually have that truth in your body, that embodiment, it takes first feeling the feelings. And, typically a lot of times it's anger, and then it's sadness. And then we go into a grief process where when we start to come to acceptance that, this thing happened, this situation is the way it is, and we don't see it changing. And that's where grief can come up. Grief is a part of the acceptance process, because once we accept, this person is that way, this person is not open to change, this person's not open to conversation, especially if it's somebody that you've cared about in your life, it could bring about such deep sadness. And just grief, because there's really there's no control over that. There's no controlling it. And so I think it's very healthy to let yourself grieve. And there's the 5 stages of grief, and the stages of grief do not necessarily happen in a certain order, but I think one of the things is to really just let ourselves feel that. And so we can go from the angry part to sad, and it could keep shifting in denial, until we finally come to acceptance. And so and it could come in all kinds of situations where forgiveness is taking place. It could be with your lover. It could be in a work situation, in a friend situation. There's lots of places that things didn't turn out the way we wish that they did. And we get to grieve it and then come to acceptance. And then the beautiful thing is then to start to shift into the magic of life, which is rejection is God's protection, right? Hey, Trevor. And rejection is God's protection. So perhaps that this person is no longer meant to be in your sphere, and once they kind of move out of your energy field, it opens up the space for much better to come in. Energetically, the universe does not like a vacuum, right? The universe does not like a vacuum. So once there's space, it leaves room for something else to come in. Typically, it's something better. And that's really difficult to imagine when you have somebody that you care about, that you can see is starting to really be out of alignment with your frequency, especially if it's somebody that you've known for a really long time, and that you see that they're starting to float out of your frequency, that conversations aren't working, there's no seeing eye to eye, and that can be really eye-opening and difficult, and it might be something that we are in denial about for a while, and that would make a lot of sense. And coming from a place where learning effective communication has been such a big part of my awakening process, and also a part of what I teach people, right? So that we can communicate from a place of awareness and a place of ownership, so that we take full responsibility for what we experience, right? So our lives are our responsibility, not that things that happen in our experience are our fault, but it's our responsibility to receive our life, and also to decide how we're going to receive what happens. We get to choose the story we tell ourselves, and that takes a lot of awareness, and sometimes some practice. And then, of course, we add the somatics to it, right? So we get to move it through our body. I noticed in myself, one of my old habits was, I guess I'm a recovering, what do you call that? Perfectionist. And so, and I wanted to figure out how to fix things, right? As I was the big sister in the family, and so, I was taking care of things. So I was praised for, being mommy's helper when I was really little, and just taking care of things and being in charge of, teaching my siblings and things like that. So there was a sense of safety and when I was in control, when I was taking care of things. But when we're in relationships with people, we don't have control over people, right? One of the wisest things that I've learned was from an old therapist that I used to go to, and she would say, you can't take a person's path from them. And it really landed for me. And I share that with my students and my clients often, because people will come to me about, their brother, their sister, their aunt, their uncle, their parents, and you children, and you can't take a person's path from them. And so, but when it's somebody in your life and you can see them slipping away because you're kind of coming into this big awareness, or maybe you just have different needs and you're expressing them, and they're either not hearing you, they don't want to hear you, or they push back or take it personally and then leave no room for repair, then this is when grief could come up. And so if we surrender to the grief, if we trust the grief and the sadness, if we trust what has come up, there's a saying that I shared this morning in a mastermind meeting I was in, and I shared rejection is God's protection, and that statement was new to a couple of the people in the group, but I've heard that for a really long time. Rejection is God's protection. And so if we can trust that, if we can believe that, then we can trust that whatever's coming up is okay, and just letting it be the poetry of life, right? Like, how many people are you still friends with that you were friends with when you were 5 years old? Most people, probably not many. And so it's okay. People are in your life for a season, a reason, and a lifetime. And it's also okay to grieve. And it's okay to be angry. So... And that's where I'm just thinking about the processes around this. That's why I'm pausing. And so, naming the emotion is really important. Moving the emotion somatically is really important. Journaling about it is important too. And but really what's more important is being able to name it out loud. And sometimes repair can happen later, right? Some people are just not there, and it can be really sad. So I've seen this in a number of situations around me lately, and it's like so many people are going through this at the same time, and it could be really difficult. And so it's really important to keep moving the body, keep moving the breath, and tonight in the meditation, I kept bringing people back to naming what it is, right? Just kind of calling it, and then pulling light in to move the body. So energetically, emotions are energy in motion. So, we could come at moving some of these things that could feel really heavy. So we could come at moving these things through the physical body, through the emotional body, through the mental body. So we could start to tell ourselves a different story. Like, if that person, was like attracted into your field and then went away, that they're not meant for you, so bye-bye, right? And if somebody's been in your life for a really long time, and then a lot of pushback starts to happen, and it gets to the point where there's no like healthy repair, or somebody's boundaries are not being respected, like bye-bye, right? And it's not, I mean, I'm simplifying it. There's an emotional component to it, but the thing is to trust that if somebody's going, then let them. Let's just breathe into that, because I'm sure that might have hit a nerve. Actually, as I'm thinking of that was something that I think I first heard that through Mel Robbins. She's an author and a speaker. She did the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and get up and do something. Anyway, she had a podcast or a video about let them. And I think she learned it from somebody else. But the whole idea is acceptance, right? How quickly can we let go, and how quickly can we accept what's happening so that we can make space for magic, right? So a lot of my work is about using your voice, getting clear with your intuition, moving any trauma and energy out of your body. And why? So that we can create the life that we want. So the people that I work with, I have them start to define where they're going and what they would like to create, and start to see it. And so, you know, if we can not spiritually bypass, but start to acknowledge the emotions, acknowledge what's happening, and accept, and then release, and then start to really visualize what you're calling in. What did you write on your vision board, right? What is it that you would like to come into your life? We could start to pivot our energy into what's coming in. And with the space that is being left by whatever is leaving, you know, yes, mourn it, yes, grieve it, and it's a new space, right? The end of anything is the beginning of something. The end of anything is the beginning of something. So, you know, maybe another relationship is going to be repaired and take the place of the one that can't be repaired, right? So, I don't know, life is funny. Life is very funny. I've, you know, at times in my life I've thought about, I'm just kind of stepping back for a second, but just thinking about life, like as a, you know, over time when I've thought about life, like philosophically, like why is it so hard to have fun? Why is it so hard to let go of, you know, people, places, and things that actually are no longer good for us? It's very interesting. It doesn't even make logical sense. But as you start to look at it, and especially as you start to look at trauma, and again, there's big T, little t trauma, of course it makes sense that it's difficult for us to trust, difficult for us to surrender, difficult for us to let go. We're afraid of being alone. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of, you know, being judged. And therefore it makes us afraid to be authentic. And, you know, I have a whole program called Authentic Expression Activation just for that reason. And, you know, for a lot of us, it was hard to become authentic in our own families, in the safety of our own homes. Just, it wasn't available. And so, but you don't have to let that define the rest of your life. And it's okay to take your time to do the healing. What's not okay is to make believe that healing doesn't need to happen, right? Let's not brush it under the rug. Let's not spiritually bypass. Let's not, you know, try to brush over it. Let's tell ourselves the truth, right? And, you know, as we're telling ourselves the truth, we're taking responsibility. As we're taking responsibility, that keeps us in our power. And, you know, and then sometimes the truth is blurry. So it's okay to take time to evaluate and ask yourself the question, like, how could I take more responsibility for this situation? How could I take more responsibility? And not blame, right? And if that starts to make your nervous system anxious or tight, then pull back and start to do some of the somatic exercises. I've given you some in some of the other videos, and if you're looking for more, we can talk about that. Feel free to send me a DM about what you would like to hear. But we can just reground ourselves and reconnect, and just create your own safety within your own body. This is how we self-resource. And of course, then have a trusted person to talk to. So, yeah, and I'm always here. Feel free to send me a message. And so I think that's where I'm going to leave it tonight. So just know that as you're navigating relationships, and you might be in the season as I have a handful of people in my circle right now that are having relationships where they're managing some pretty difficult things. And so, as we can come to acceptance and maybe think about the other person's point of view and think about your own point of view. Like, of course, I would react this way based on my experiences of the past. And this is with the self-forgiveness, right? So maybe you look at it that way, or maybe look at them and say, of course they're going to react that way. They only have the ability to a certain point, and then they just don't. They just shut down, or they overly react instead of respond. There's so many different ways that you can try to see from their point of view and have compassion. And as we come to that acceptance and surrender, and we can come to more of the forgiveness. And then after the forgiveness, we can decide what that's going to look like later. And and let yourself grieve. Let yourself grieve and take full responsibility. And I have one of my clients right now practicing Ho'oponopono, which I also practice. Ho'oponopono is a Hawaiian prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. It's 4 lines, Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. This is if you do the research on it, it's a very miraculous prayer that creates miraculous results when done on repeat. So I practice this myself, and I have one of my one-on-one clients right now actively part of this person's self-exploration for the next 2 weeks is to practice Ho'oponopono every day. And the idea of it, the energy behind it, is that I'm fully responsible for what happens in my life. And therefore, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what happened. I'm sorry that we're both in this situation. I'm sorry that we had a miscommunication. I'm sorry if we're not seeing eye to eye. Please forgive me. So you're asking for forgiveness, even if it's to yourself. Please forgive me for freezing and not saying the thing that I wish I said, or please forgive me for saying the thing that came out wrong, or please forgive me for whatever it is, right? Please forgive me. Thank you, right? So finding gratitude. And the gratitude that's where you're trusting in the higher power. That's where you're trusting in God. That's where you're trusting in something bigger, right? You're trusting that whatever's happening is happening to line something else up, right? So perhaps that person is moving out of your life, which can be heartbreaking, but then there's this vacuum and somebody better is coming in, or multiple people are coming in. Maybe your business expands because you got this parasite out of your life, right? And some people are energetic parasites. So I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So finding gratitude in the thank you for whatever's happening. And you could say thank you without knowing the end result of how it's going to turn out, just having blind faith. So thank you. And then I love you. And I love you, you can say to yourself, right? And I hope that you do. I have my students do it almost every week. Lauren is here, and she knows that. Lauren says, love this, so true. Oh, yes. I'm assuming that you're talking about the Ho'oponopono part. And And I love you could be universal love, and love you can be even sending love to the person that hurt you. And that could be one of the hardest things. I know when we do the metta meditation, which is another video, but when we do metta, we do it to, oh, everything, I love you, missed you tonight in class. But yeah, the metta is more of like, the metta meditation is when we get to the part where we say the lines to somebody that makes us angry. That could be hard. I know I do it sometimes and I'm like, oh, I'm going to gag, right? But, we want to first feel the feelings, right? So let's just give the asterisks here. We do not want to spiritually bypass any of our feelings. And also we want to bring love into everything. When I had my Love Frequency Summit last year, it was all about bringing in the higher frequency. And my work every day on myself is about how I can rise up to the next highest frequency that I can access. And so I know one of the things that I have worked on is like what I was saying earlier about that. I was the older sister, so I was taking care of things, I was in control. And so what I've noticed that I walked away with is if I can't fix something, the situation comes back in my mind over and over again, almost like I'm having the conversation again in my mind because my mind wants to fix it. In psychology, they call that rumination. Can be very painful, and also it will lower your frequency. It will bring you to the frequency of the person that is toxic, right? Because if you're not having a reparation conversation, if it's not possible with that person, then a lot of times that is just a toxic interaction. Because there's never, well, almost never, usually there's not a 100% right and a 100% wrong. And so the idea is to come together and talk, but it's not just to say, this was my experience of you. It's also to listen and really listen and receive, what was your experience of me? I know I went through a period where I reached out to two different, hey there, Denise. I reached out to two different, I'll give a little personal story about this, because receiving feedback can be very helpful, but only when invited. If you give feedback uninvited or without permission, that's abuse. If you say, well, I'm going to give you feedback. When I was in gratitude training, there was a process about giving feedback, but the first step was always asking permission. Are you open to hearing feedback? What I've experienced with people, even in gratitude training, I was actually in the middle of a reparation conversation with a fellow sister who also did gratitude training, and we were making the reparation, and then she started just giving me feedback about something that she decided wasn't okay without asking me if I was open to feedback. When you do that, you're never going to get the result that you desire, because once you start giving feedback to somebody who didn't give you permission, who was not open to it, you're going to make them feel like they're cornered, and they're going to want to come back at you or totally shut down. Okay, hold on. Let me just see what's coming through. I was about to say something about feedback, but I don't remember. I went into a tangent. Hey, Cam. So, let me just get regrounded. Well, I'll just go back to the main idea, which is about surrendering and trusting and in forgiveness. And that grief can be a part of the process of accepting people for who they are. And there's something very freeing in that. When you get to the point of, you've gone through the emotions, you did not deny your anger, you're telling yourself the truth, or the sadness, and all the aspects of grief. And then you start to come into thinking about why that other person could be thinking, acting, doing, or not doing that way. And you also look at yourself, right? So if you're pointing it out, there's 3 other fingers pointing back at you, right? So if you're pointing out there, also, where's your responsibility? How did I play a part in this? After you start to look at all of that, you can kind of make peace with it. Like, okay, like we might not have been able to come together, but I can see how I played a part in this and how they played a part in this. And after that, you can really come to some genuine compassion for everyone involved. And sometimes it's just that you're being guided to go in separate directions, right? I was in a mastermind call this morning, as I said, and there was a woman talking about this business deal that was not going through, and she started listing all the things that were happening, and the rest of us were like, like you are obviously being redirected. But the beautiful thing is that we were able to reflect back to her all the goodness that came out of it. Like she had already prepared, flyers and, materials and contracts, like things that she could use over and over again. So if you can move through the emotion, feel them, not just compartmentalize them, put them away. No, feel them, move it, scream it, use your voice, movement, and breath. Feel it fully, name it, and then you come to the lessons, you come out so much wiser, and then you can, in most situations, can actually have more love and compassion for everyone. Just like the Ho'oponopono that we were just talking about, right? The last line is, I love you. That's universal love. So that means that you can send love to the person that hurt you after you've done this healing work. It is not always easy, and if you do it too soon, it's not real, and the magic of a Ho'oponopono will not work. So that's why I do it often, and I have a client of mine doing it every day right now as a part of her self-study. But I remembered what I was talking about before was feedback, and how it could be really helpful in relationship repair when you are open to receiving feedback. Of course, within certain parameters, right? You want to talk in I terms. You do not want to say, you did this, or you made me feel. That's like what we used to say in like 6th grade, right? So you made me feel is not helpful. It's actually very hurtful, and you'll, again, put somebody up against the wall, and they'll either come at you or they'll shut down. It does not help. But if you come out with, this was my experience when this happened, this is how I felt, when we did this, and this, it reminded me of this, and you can help the other person understand where you are, the intimacy is so beautiful that can happen after that. And sometimes, even after relationships are over, it can be helpful to receive feedback. Of course, within dually consented, both people are consenting to this conversation. So it must be done in a way that's very conscious. I guess that's why they call it conscious uncoupling, right? But receiving and giving feedback could be very helpful, because especially if you are in the process of evolving as a conscious human, it can be very helpful. I have asked people for honest feedback from the people that I know are going to give conscious feedback, not verbal regurgitation, and it's been very helpful. I've also had the experience of asking for feedback from people who just totally shut down and were not open to it. So it doesn't always work, but that's okay. We always get to come back to our hearts and to ourselves. So these are my thoughts tonight regarding, I'm a manifesting generator, so I respond to the things that I hear. And so, surrendering and trusting in relationships. Accepting means letting go of control. It means accepting people for who they are, exactly as they are. And I don't just mean tolerating, but I mean really coming to an understanding of where they're coming from. That's the higher level. That's the wisdom. That's how you raise your frequency, because then you're unhooked. When I do energy work on people, I can feel people, I feel hooks and cords that we're so attached to. That's something that we can remove and fill with light. And as you do this work around it, you will prevent the cords from coming back, because you're no longer attached and you're no longer growing them because your connection in your thinking is totally different. You're not open to the hook. You're not open to the hook. You can't get hooked, right? Just tell them, in your mind even, just that it's okay. So anyway, just sending love to all of you that might be going through this. As I said, I know a lot of people. I have a handful of people right now going through these difficult situations, and so there's acceptance, there's grief, there's letting go of control, there's surrender, and there's forgiveness. But just don't rush it. Don't rush forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't real if you just say, I forgive you. Let yourself feel it. Let yourself have the process. And make sure you feel all the other emotions that aren't so pretty first so that they're not buried. And, get support with somatics so that you can move it out of your body. I know sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes you think you have, and then it creeps back up later. So just being a conscious human and dealing with things as they come up is the highest and best for all. So sending so much love. Thank you for those of you that have popped in and out as I've been chatting tonight with my second wind and after I recovered from that giant cockroach who was crawling around, and now I don't know where it is. Which is not good. But so it's really nice. So feel free to join me next week on Akasa Monobliss. I talk about these things in a little bit less depth, but today was day 17 of 30 lives in 30 days. So if there's any subject matter you want me to expand upon, feel free to send me a note. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 18. All right, sending so much love and light.